back in the day, there was this company called Bozak. And Bozak made loudspeakers, like a speaker in a cabinet. I don't know, was it the 50s, 60s? I don't know. It's pretty popular. But I think might have been 40s. But I know when they started doing business, I believe things were mono. There was one speaker in a room. You had one speaker. That was the way it went.
That makes it cheaper all around.
Yeah.
You need one channel of amplification.
I imagine if you were a baller, you could put two of them in a room, but they both played the same information
Right.
because music was mono back in the day when you had it in the home. There was no stereo. And then ultimately, somewhere along the way, someone decided, let's do a left-right channel. I don't know the time frame on this. But bottom line is that, you think about things like that, and it's like, they don't make them like they used to, right? They don't make stuff like they used to. You'd have one giant speaker in the room. I think they were big. They were like 15-inch, something like that. And it did full range on it. It had to do everything. There were no tweeters. There was nothing. It was one paper cone giant speaker that ran on like a quarter watt, because there was no big amps back then either. Everything was like under a watt of power, so it had to be efficient. So anyway, that's the way stuff was done back in the day. Fast forward to today.
Well, now you got like compact little Bluetooth speakers that are like 15 watts. You know,
Class
on
D
batteries,
amplifiers running 1,000 watts a channel.
Yeah.
Things changed dramatically over the years with anything to do with technology. And strangely enough, you look at a speaker, it's a box with some drivers in it. You wouldn't think it would change that much or need to change, but things are always designed around the limitations and the capabilities of the day. So like you mentioned, speakers needed to be more efficient. And that was just simply a fact because the amplifiers weren't as powerful. And it's not to suggest they couldn't make a more powerful one. It's just, well, they didn't need to because speakers were efficient.
Yeah, they didn't need to, So
Chicken and the egg.
Yeah, but I mean, there's things. I mean, there are things you look at that are old versus new, and then new versus old, right? And in both ways, there are pluses and minuses. Like like electronics today are so disposable. Where back in the day, like when I had my first receiver, and I had like way too many speakers on it. Like I just had speakers all over the room.
Yeah.
So the transistors would literally just blow up.
Right.
Because I didn't know any better that you can't put like a half ohm impedance on a receiver, whatever, and you're cranking it because you're a kid all the time, and you'd lose a channel, and then no problem. I mean, luckily I was fortunate enough to know how to use a soldering iron. I went out and ordered some new. I went to Radio Shack and bought some new output transistors and fixed my receiver. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, this thing only put out a few watts, but that you were able to repair that. But nowadays, it's like you look at stuff and it's like, I don't think I'd even want to begin to figure out what went wrong when something fails.
Yeah, that's true. But like in a modern receiver, it wouldn't blow up.
Maybe.
They
Would
have
it protect
protection.
itself?
Yeah, because when I was a kid,
in a perfect world,
my receiver had protection, so I would be tripping it all the time
Oh,
because I
that's
was doing
true.
stupid stuff.
Well, we had hand-me-down ones.
Yeah,
I
right.
blew a few of them up.
Yeah.
But I did fix a few.
Yeah. See,
It's pretty easy to
Yeah.
replace the
Well,
devices.
the older
But they blew
ones.
up all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And these were at the time from like 60s or 70s or whatever. They were old units.
Yeah, with the
And
wood panels on the side.
It was the wood
yeah.
panels
Yeah,
and
receiver,
fuses and
old
stuff,
school.
little glass
It's
fuses.
probably the same one you
A lot
fixed.
of people still use them.
They do.
Mine was a Morse audiophile series.
Uh-huh.
MORSE. I don't even know who.
I think I had
was.
Morse or something. I don't know. I had three
Yeah.
different units. They
Yeah.
were all from you.
Had
though.
an 8-track in the front panel.
Well,
You
I'm
put an
talking
8-track.
when I got a new receiver.
Yes.
Then you could do stupid
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
But
right.
we started by blowing up receivers because the fuses would blow because we were doing stupid things.
So you put a bigger fuse.
And then
That-
you
right.
don't put a bigger fuse in, you put no fuse in.
Yeah,
Oh,
you just
right.
put a wire in there.
whatever, and you wrap a piece of wire
that
around
solves
it.
that problem.
Yeah.
And then it blows up, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
whoopsie doodles.
Yeah.
But eventually we ended up getting newer stuff, modern stuff, and it had protections. And I only blew one of those up.
Yeah.
But they lasted a lot. They were very durable. So it's complicated because you look at the newer designs and you can't fix it that easy. They tend to get more and more complex.
But you think about that,
over
it's
the
the same
years.
way with automobiles. Like, who even can tell where a water pump is in a car nowadays? You don't even see the damn thing. It's integrated into the engine.
Well,
Where
you
when
know,
I was a
you
kid,
can't
you'd
see the
unbolt
engine.
the damn thing, and
Now it's just covered with
kinda.
plastic.
Yeah, so it was,
It's harder.
It was just we fixed our cars back in the day. It was easy when you were a kid. Nowadays you can't even. There's probably
the
10 sensors
question
that go
is-
bad when you.
Is that worse, though?
Well,
It's complicated. So this is a never-ending debate online because, yeah, it's worse in some ways, but it's better in others. Part of the appeal of the new stuff is oftentimes it does need less servicing or less repairs. Cars are more reliable than they ever have
Well,
been.
that's for
Even
sure.
though people complain they're not reliable, cars used to last
I
2,
can't
3,
remember
4
the-
years.
I can't remember the last time a
Now they
master
last 10 or
cylinder
20.
failed on my brakes, but
right.
But I think every 2-3 years you'd replace a master cylinder in
Yeah,
the 70s.
people don't really do that anymore. Now
Yeah.
the car's 10 or 15 years old. Maybe
Yeah.
you have a problem with the brakes.
Yeah, I guess that comes down to I don't know what it is. The precision.
It's
I would.
Lessons learned over the years.
I think it's more precise manufacturing
Well,
is what
that
it was.
too.
Like the Japanese brought that upon us, I think, didn't they? I think they were the ones that said,
Well,
"Hey,
that's
you know,
everything.
we make things more precision with the little 4-cylinder engines," and
It's
they
an
ran.
understanding in the design stage of the product, what's likely to break, what's likely to be an issue, and then you try to design it out. You try to build the product so this thing that was an issue isn't an issue. And it's a fundamental shift in how the products are designed. And sometimes it means more complexity. Sometimes it means in a receiver you put protections in place so that you could detect and shut down in the event of it being overloaded or getting too hot or something.
You know, come
whereas
to
the old
think of
stuff
it-
didn't do that.
Come to think of it, the old receivers from the early 70s were made in Japan.
A lot of
Made
them,
in
yeah.
Japan.
Yeah, you could still blow them up though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, well, yeah.
So-
Well, I guess then you go the other way to more not modern, but more modern times, and like Alex Cavalli with the liquid gold. Too much protection.
Yeah.
it took minutes sometimes.
He called
to
it. He
warm
called
up.
it housekeeping circuitry.
Yeah.
It would keep an eye and monitor on things like, I don't even know what it monitored.
Yeah.
Current, demand on the power supply, I would assume, bias
Yeah, 'cause
currents going
you would
through
never
various
know how
guiding
long
stages.
it would take to turn on.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be 30 seconds. Sometimes it could be minutes.
Yeah, don't even know what the variables were there, but yeah. You call it housekeeping, but yeah. But I mean, that's looking at things. Now, chances are with a lot of electronics, they build like the receivers, they built it into the chipset.
Yeah.
It's all like it's a chip that that's probably with 50 op amps in it. It just looks at all kinds of compares two different things and says, okay, what changed? But yeah, neither here nor there. We're getting kind of boring here. The reality of it is, it's like you could think of all kinds of examples where things nowadays are built different depending on how far back you go. We were talking earlier before this about washers and even dryers, where dealing with clothing and and how back in the day, some people are still running washers from their grandparents' days, right? Where they're still working.
They still work
They had an
sometimes.
old school transmission in there, it was steel gears, and now
Right.
it's all direct drive motors and electronics. So it's
But that was a
different.
fundamental change in how things were designed, because in those days they were designed to be repaired and repairable. And you could say that's better, but they also were expensive, which was a big part of the reason, most likely, why they were made to be repaired. Because you paid a lot of money for this. You expected it to last. You expected it to be
a
able to be
transmission in an old
used.
washer you probably could have put into a go-kart or something. It would have worked.
I'm
just
sure
fine.
it's been done.
They were big. They were big things, man. I remember seeing. You flip over an old washer, and the whole bottom of it was taken up by this transmission that actually allowed the thing to agitate back and forth. Think about how to make something go back and forth with a motor spinning like this. That to make that motion.
Yeah, for
you know.
20 or 30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Continuously. Just sloshing around
Water and
50 pounds
heavy
of water
clothes,
and
yeah.
another 50 pounds of clothes. That's a serious device. In fact, people probably lost small children in those things when you think about it. It was like those things were dangerous. They were supposed to turn off when you lifted the top, but I think a lot of people
They
bypassed.
had
Oh, yeah.
switches broke.
Yeah. Because
You know?
when I moved into my house, there was a new but old style washer, and it didn't work. You
Yeah.
open it up, it'll keep spinning.
Yeah, so they were dangerous back in
Yeah.
the day, and those things once they got going. But anyway, so you could say in some respects things are made better than they used to be. But then again, sometimes they're not. Like I can't stand my current dryer; it just tends to bunch up blankets and doesn't dry them well. And I'm like, why doesn't it reverse sometimes? It's got all this whiz bang electronics.
Well, I mean, they can.
Yeah.
Most dryers are very simple still,
Yeah.
because I
It's
guess
crazy.
they're getting away with it. It's working. But you do see way more complexity now than you ever had. And partly it's probably just because complexity is almost free. It's very cheap to put complexity in. And that makes things very different, and in a lot of ways maybe not so repairable. And you could say it's designed to fail or designed to have a short life. But oftentimes the complexity solves problems. It solves real problems. It makes the product easier to use or work better. And clothes washing machines take way less water, way less energy than they used to. And they oftentimes could wash clothes more effectively and even faster on occasion, or only use cold water and save a huge amount of energy.
Refrigerators are like that too. Remember refrigerators back in the day, you'd have to have almost a separate 15 amp circuit just for the refrigerator, because when the compressor kicked in,
Yeah.
it would be like, oh, lights
Yeah,
would
And the thing
Nowadays,
is,
you don't even
people
know it's
still
running.
Yeah, but people still think today that refrigerators take a lot of power
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
But nowadays they really don't.
They've made the, I don't know how they've made it so much more efficient, but they did, you know.
Well,
whether-
curiously, they really didn't make it more
Yeah.
efficient. They decreased the inrush primarily. It seems like the major change has been improving so it doesn't have a
Three-phase-
huge surge of power when
three-phase
it,
compressors.
when it turns on, so it doesn't dim your lights and flicker your lights when it
So
starts.
it's
But
tech.
it doesn't.
It's all about tech.
Well, it depends. A lot of them have electronically driven compressors.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they don't really make them more efficient than they used to, oddly enough. It's just the perception that they're more efficient.
Obviously, LED light bulbs have changed dramatically in terms of how we light our homes and save power,
Sure.
but I can't say as if they're any more reliable than in can.
Oh, they definitely are.
I don't know. I mean, it
Well,
seems like
that's another one of those complex ones.
Yeah,
Because they
maybe.
can be, but I've had cheap bulbs that fail in like weeks, months.
Yeah.
He had one that failed right when he plugged it in. So
Yeah, that's
apparently
true.
they didn't
But
even
that
test
wasn't.
it.
That was like the early days of LED
Yeah.
bulbs. But now the ones I haven't had 8 years. None of them.
the funny
failed.
thing is
So-
like, you know what happened when you dropped an old school bulb, it would go,
Yeah, well,
glass
yeah.
would break.
Yeah.
I've dropped brand new LED bulbs and they just don't turn on. So it's like, it's kind of the same problem. You don't get
Well,
the glass to clean up, but you got the same
some are
problem.
glass.
They can't handle a
Some
drop.
are still glass.
Yeah, but it's, but again, you can't complain about the price. These things, relatively speaking, are inexpensive.
A lot of things
for
keep
what
getting
they are.
cheaper.
Yeah, it's
oddly
crazy.
enough.
I mean, again, it boils down to it's disposable. Even if one out of a 6-pack
Well,
doesn't
light
work.
bulbs have
cares?
always been disposable.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, but it's, I don't know, it's funny. Like you look at stuff like we got in front of us, like a Marshall amp. We used to, back in our old set, back in the day when we used to do YouTube videos, 4 or 5 years ago, our first YouTube, we had a big Marshall stack behind us,
Mhm.
and I got this little toy one here, but yeah, obviously, but yeah, I mean, people still covet stuff like that, right? They want the tubes. They
Well,
want.
that's the difference, though. You
Yeah.
can still buy it and it looks
They
like
still
that.
make it.
So you can still buy it and it looks the same
In
as 50 years
fact,
ago.
Don't they make 2 versions of that? They make the made in China version
Yeah.
and make a made in USA version that's significantly more.
Well,
but
the Marshalls, I don't think are made. They're not. It's not a U.S. company, but
yeah, then they
yeah,
have, I think
Fender
they-
does that. I
Is
know
it
that.
Fender?
Fender,
Someone
they
had one
make
that
a
was
U.S.
made.
version. It's
Yeah.
all handmade in the U.S.
yeah,
point to point still.
Yeah, not a PC board
Yeah.
type thing.
Or
Old
you can get the
school.
cheaper one. So you
Yeah.
can get them made literally
Yeah.
exactly the same, brand new.
Yeah, right.
That's guitars are a weird thing though.
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia in that whole thing, and dealing with it. But I get it. I mean, people that play guitars, right, they're after a certain sound. And amplifiers like this, the classic sound, which of course you could do digitally and
Well, yeah.
reconstruct,
Right.
make it sound any way you want. But the classic electronics and tubes like this allow you to go back in time and
Yeah.
play a guitar just like the music you were listening to when you were a kid.
Yeah, if you're trying to play music from the 60s, you can buy an amp that sounds like
Yeah.
music they played in the 60s.
But I don't think there's anything like the analog equivalent, is there? There's just analog, just straight up analog.
Maybe.
The tubes glowing, throwing some heat,
This is sort of one of my gripes with most modern things, though. So you talk about the days of analog, and really the benefit of analog in a lot of ways is its simplicity, right? The things that are difficult are solved for you elsewhere, so you don't need to worry about the design having a large impact in some ways. Now you compare it to digital, where you have absolute control oftentimes in how something sounds or performs or works. But what that means is a lot of things are effectively software driven. There's a huge amount
The computer's
of
in
impact
charge.
you could have on how the software works and whatever it's doing. And what that means is your skill as a designer, as a software engineer or whatever, has a big impact on how the thing performs, how long it lasts, how it works and functions. And oftentimes you see shoddy implementations of almost everything.
Mm.
So yeah, people do say that something like an analog product could be better.
Or they give you like 1,000 features and most of them suck,
Well,
and it just
Right.
ruins it.
It's not refined. It
Yeah.
doesn't really work. It
Right.
has 100 things. 2 of them
But
are
it's a
kinda
hell of a
okay.
list for
Yeah,
all
the
marketing. And
specs
look
are-
at what this thing can do. Yeah, sometimes that's why a lot of people like the old school stuff. Regardless of what it is, they like driving a '57 Corvette.
Mhm.
That's the attraction, right?
It was-
Is it doesn't have any
It has
computer.
nothing. It
Yeah.
has nothing.
You're in charge. You've got a stick shift, a clutch. You know, let's going back to car analogies, right?
Mhm.
But you know, yeah, you think about it. You know, there's
It has its pros.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of cons.
I get that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that it's mainly because those are. I think the people that would be attracted to that probably grew up with it more so than the modern. Like, I don't know. Do you ever see an 18-year or 20-year-old kid want to get a 57 Chevy? Probably not.
Not really, no.
No. Unless they were in their father's one. Maybe
Sure,
if their
sure.
father owned one and it's something, you know, has to
Yeah.
do with, you know,
Yeah,
reminiscing.
you grew up with one.
Yeah, yeah. Or when you were a kid, you were driven around in something like that. So maybe.
Yeah.
you
There's
know.
probably not a lot of
But
that.
you're probably
either,
going to be in
though.
your 30s and 40s when you're going to be like, you know, older, like, you know. When
Yeah,
when
you're not
wanna
going to get it as your first car.
No, yeah, no. You're going to want something that looks cool and sporty. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. I don't know. Where are we going with this?
No idea.
They don't make them like they used to. You know, they just don't. You know, and there's pluses and minuses of that. You know, and some people pick on calling things old. You know, oh, that's old. Get something new. You know, well, sometimes things that are older are better. Sometimes depends what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
Depends.
it's a very fickle thing because almost universally, over time, things can get better. Doesn't mean they do. They can, right? You learn things from the old stuff. You saw the issues. You know how to improve it. You know more now than you did then. That doesn't mean the new product's better because oftentimes people want to pay less for a product. They expect things to just automatically get better.
Yeah, price does kind of like
so price is a big impact.
kind of commands where things go.
You just want the
in
price to go
everything,
down and down
you
and
know?
down, right?
Yeah.
And people love buying cheap stuff. So if somebody makes something cheap, if you're in that same industry, well, it's hard for you to compete at a higher price. So there's this sort of drive to have things cheap. And what that means is things are often rushed. People just pump it out the door, get it done, and it's not refined.
The cost of flat screen TVs like behind us here are just crazy. They're so low. I don't even know how you could ship them for that cost. It's crazy.
Yeah,
when you
they're
think
super
about it.
cheap now comparatively.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's just I don't even know how you optimize a process like that. But then again, I guess you look at any modern process and say that.
But that's the thing. It wasn't even that long ago. Like early 2000s, late 90s. I remember like the first plasmas, 42 inches, right? Not big by today's standards, and they were $15,000-$20,000.
Yeah.
Now they're 175. You know. For
Yeah, my
something like that.
first flat screen was a Fujitsu. I don't even know what was out other than that. You might have had two choices back in the day, and it weighed about 60 pounds.
Oh, yeah, it was glass and metal.
Yeah,
and it was
heavy.
made in Japan
Yeah,
still.
yeah. And it was like I think it was $3,000, which was relatively speaking is.
It
Well,
wasn't even a TV.
It's how
That
much
was
a
the other
higher
thing.
end what is today. A higher
It was
end
just a
flat screen.
monitor. It didn't even have
That's
a tuner.
true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you physically had to tie it into a source, but yeah, I mean, look at us now. Wow. I mean, you can get for that much money, you can get one hell of a big screen.
Oh, you get whatever you
and
want.
higher up in terms of resolution. It's the same with audio too. In audio, it's the same deal. Started with talking about that single Bozak speaker in people's living rooms, and look at the loudspeakers we have today. You could spend practically unlimited amount of money on a stereo. Practically, I
Yeah.
mean, you could go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars if you wanted to.
But the
problem.
low end still exists. That's the thing.
True.
And it's probably lower than it's ever been.
And probably better than ever.
And
Probably.
it sounds way better than that Bozak
Yeah,
ever did.
Probably.
But in a lot of ways, that's an issue because it creates more confusion. So what we've seen over the years is prices went down and up almost universally.
Yeah, true.
And it just means there's more stuff. So it makes it harder to see what's right, what's good, what do I want to buy. And there's plenty of stuff that is just junk. That's just a reality. And it makes it easy for people to say, well, they don't make it like they used to because this thing is new and it's junk.
Right.
I think that's probably why you tend to see older people, investing, in the higher end of things, because they've bought junk over and over again.
Yeah.
They keep throwing it out, and
It's like I'm finally gonna do it.
Yeah.
Just gonna get what I actually
something
want.
real. Yeah, and I mean, you're not seeing any investment if you keep tossing it, and especially if you're not enjoying whatever it is. If you're not really enjoying it,
Well, yeah. What's
if
the
it's
point
just
then?
there in the room or whatever, in the car or whatever, yeah, you're not really enjoying it, then yeah, at some point, maybe you wake up and go, I'm going to buy a real one this time. It could be camera, a lens on a camera, a microphone, a speaker. You see a lot of people, golf clubs,
Well, yeah.
you ever get a set of golf clubs at a garage sale? They
No.
suck. The reason they're at a garage sale, they're like suck. They're
Well, not
rusty.
always,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
generally.
I mean, they're
Sure.
relatively speaking, they're not. You're not going to find Titleist clubs sitting in a. That's
Maybe though.
unlikely.
Maybe
you
it's
know?
Tiger Woods'
It could be.
garage
Garage
sale.
sale.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. Every
They
time
were
I've
last
seen them,
year's
they're like,
model,
They're
yeah.
like $20 and they suck.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's things like that where you get older, and I guess you appreciate more of the finer things in life.
Well, I guess
you
like
know?
all sporting equipment's kind of like that. You see like those old like 60s tennis rackets, and they're like made out of wood and
Oh,
super
yeah.
heavy. And you see the modern ones, they're like weigh nothing.
Yeah.
You know, big difference
Are they
there.
fiberglass or aluminum nowadays, or both?
Carbon.
Oh yeah, carbon fiber. Yeah. Those are expensive though.
They're
aren't
expensive.
they? Yeah. See, there you go. Hockey sticks are like that too.
True.
Back in the day, we had wood. Like kids,
Yeah, they're
obviously
pretty
wood.
expensive.
Yeah. You broke them all the time. You got the plastic blade to replace it. Now you're on
Yeah,
plastic.
well, the
Uh-huh.
difference, you can't use a carbon fiber stick on the street, though.
Yeah.
It would just tear it up.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
That's for ice.
You can't
only.
have the good stuff on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, I think we kind of covered where we were going with this. Where I'm not sure if we covered it entirely because we could go on for about 5 million days.
Yeah.
About,
Right.
You know, about the old versus new, and they don't make it like they used to. And there's a lot of things that I still have around the home that I've had since I was a kid. That and usually it's in my toolbox, like a level,
Sure.
things like that. I finally broke
Yeah,
my wood
yeah.
hammer a few years ago.
The
but-
bubble of air hasn't changed much.
Yeah,
in
and it's a nice
decades.
level. It's a Craftsman aluminum.
Wow.
I mean, I've had contractors in the house going, "Wow, where'd you get that from?" I said,
Yeah.
"Well, when I was a kid, they got
Sure.
it." I haven't seen one of them in a while, so it's kind of cool when you think about it. Some of these things are,
But you still can get really nice levels.
you can, yeah, and they are nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're probably fiberglass, and they are nice, and 3 foot, 4 foot.
Generally, when you invest in something that for its day is quite good and was well considered and thought out, it can last quite a long time. Right? So I think there's value in that,
Mhm.
but part of the trick is knowing if this thing is actually any good.
And you got to consider whether it's an investment in what you're trying to accomplish in life. It's something you want to,
Well,
put money toward.
it's
or not.
especially if you do things professionally. If
Yeah,
you're
right.
a pro contractor,
Yeah,
You
you're just
need
going to be
something-
breaking it
yeah,
or
right.
wearing it
You
out.
need
It's
something that's
cost
gonna
and-
work.
They'll break it before it breaks
Yeah.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So yeah, there's all kinds of trade-offs and obviously criteria that has to be met in order for you to decide how to spend your hard-earned dollars.
mm-hmm.
On that note, we got to get to work.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good one. Take care.